review. This is Daisy Michael here, and we're going to be talking about Taza Khabar, which came out on Hulu. So this was a Disney and like Hotstar type of a film, and produced on Hulu. I mean, my experience with Hulu so far is there's been some good ones, there's been some bad ones. So whenever I found out I was going to be reviewing this one, I definitely wanted to see if it could at least hold up with its other platforms. As we just talked about, Netflix produces great films, especially great Hindi films. So definitely wanted to see if this would match up. So if you guys have not seen this movie, it's a very interesting type of TV show. So basically, in Taza Kabar, we're pretty much taken back, introduced to a flashback moment, classic flashback scene in a lot of Bollywood cinema, where pretty much like two people that they live on the street. We could call them like night walkers or street urchins. They're rescued from a life of crime by a benevolent guardian, and they're brought from the street and pretty much kind of given like this rise and fall like underdog story. So they're taken in under the wing of someone, and they're pretty much given the opportunity to rise up from their Mumbai slum. So this does take place in Mumbai, similar to a lot of famous movies we've seen before, most famously Slumdog Millionaire. And Taza Kabar, it's talking about the Mumbai slums. And ultimately what we see in this is it's kind of a rise and fall, from the underdog story. It's told with a speculative dosage of sci-fi that there's a little bit of a different twist, but let's kind of get into it. So we have a cast of actors here. We have Bhuvan Bam playing the main character here. He's the one playing a character called Vasant Gawadi, goes by Vasu in the film. It's a smart talking but clean-hearted vagrant man who stalls the local neighborhoods. He's kind of a night walker, if you will. He's also in love with Madhu, who is a prostitute, played with confidence by the consistently good Shreya Pilagankar. And Vasu's mother works as a house help. He constantly moves between jobs. He's working multiple jobs, and literally at times, has the desire to make more, of his life. So the series tries hard to establish Vasu's kinder side, and really tries to show the story of him grinding from the bottom, all the way to the top. In one scene, he rescues a woman who has faints and falls into a pile of dung, if you will, while others refuse to touch her. He kind of comes in and, he's very, very, very kind-hearted. But unexplainably, Vasu gets like a superpower. His phone tells him the news hours, days, sometimes weeks in advance. And he's given he just knows what's going to happen before it happens. And so, at first, he's dumbfounded and decides to use his gift to his advantage, begins using this information to make more money, and, starts to try and benefit himself. But ultimately, he comes to a point where he has to actually try and use this for good. So nonetheless, you guys are probably wondering what my thoughts are, on this movie. This series was ultimately, there were a lot of scenes that just felt very staged. I think to really kind of, go into is like, there's these things where he's, betting on cricket matches and stuff. And it's good, but like, it just kind of like, I would say the acting of like, some of the supporting cast or whatever, may have not really necessarily given off the theme that we were wanting. I will say that Bam gives a pretty committed performance, as Vasu, but he is a little, I would say, like overcommitted. I'm not familiar with his acting performances in the past, but I will say that there was a little bit of something, that I feel like it was missing. He felt a little bit more like an internet star when I was watching this. But nonetheless, like I thought his commitment to the character was great. He did really try to like, kind of encapsulate himself inside this character. And he tried to do it with some intensity, but a lot of times it did come off as a little over the top. One actor to kind of shout out is Paramathurs Parab, who plays Vasu's friend. One thing that I really kind of recognize with this movie is a lot of the supporting cast did have limited roles. Not only limited roles, but just limited screen time as well, limited lines. And I do think that there was actually some substance with some of these actors that could have brought something a little bit more to the screen. As I said, Prathamesh Parab, big shout out, because even though you had like limited space and time to kind of emerge, the scenes that you were in were really kind of like stealer. You were stealing the attention. So at least in my eyes, the ultimate problem is that like I feel like Taza Khabar wants to play off of like Hindi cinema stories. So like Mumbai slums, rising out, from the top. It's kind of a classic thing that we've seen in a lot of movies, and a lot of movies have done it very well. So it's really hard to top that. The other thing too is like there isn't a whole lot of explanations as to why he knows information, days, weeks ahead of time. There's really kind of no like set up to that. So, I do think it's playful in a way. It reminds me of an Adam Sandler movie to some sense of where you have this character, you get introduced to him, his family, his emotions and stuff. But once he's kind of given this information, once he's given this like new power, if you will, it kind of shows how like, those things that we observed before, now he has potential to uplift himself. He has a potential to do all these different things, and the series took a comedic aspect to it where he was doing bettings, he was bartering for a better price. He was positioning himself well in comedic ways. So I do think that landed, but there was a lot of what I felt to be a little bit of superficialness, with this series. Whether it was the acting, whether it was the plot line, there was a little bit of superficialness. So the direction of this, I'm not sure what the ultimate goal was. I found it to be light and playful, but there were some times where I was like this may not, this may not have been like the most natural thing. This very does, this feels like the scene they kind of had to get through, and that's exactly what they did. Would I recommend this? Sure, I'd give it a recommendation. Now, don't make this like top of your list movie, right? Put this on like on something that you'll watch, right? And let us know your thoughts because hey, I'm always reading the comments. I always want to know what you guys are thinking. I'm always trying to educate myself a little bit better too. So some people might be like, hey, this was probably the worst attempt of a Mumbai, rise and fall story, but I don't think so. I've seen some others that might take that place. So if you like this review, please